Hey lovely people, and welcome to the Gamer's Rest. My name is Tal, and in this show, Tal Talks, I get a chance to talk with talented individuals involved in the TTRPG scene. Today's guest is a writer and designer of TTRPGs and is just about to release version 2 of the Synesthesia Toolkit. It's the brilliant MND&D unicorn. Hello.
Hey, Hi. You can just call me Avery. That's
Ah,
fine. I know my
that's
username's
fine.
a kind of an awful.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today. And there's a
Yeah,
ton of
thank you so
stuff.
much for having me.
No, absolutely my pleasure. There's a ton of stuff that I kind of want to talk to you about. But first of all, do you want to just let people know who haven't come across you yet where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm mostly really on Twitter or X, I guess. MN underscore DND underscore unicorn. I do like have a Reddit, I guess, and a TikTok, but I honestly don't post there a lot right now. So really just find me on Twitter.
Cool. Excellent. So the first thing I always ask everybody, how did you get started in the industry?
Ooh, are you thinking like D&D in general or
Yeah,
like playing or
I
like
guess a bit of both
producing
really.
stuff?
So I guess a bit of how did you get started playing, and then how did you maybe get started in terms of writing and developing stuff as well?
Yeah. I guess probably 6, 7 years ago now, my roommates at the time, none of us had played D&D before, period. And one of them was just like, "Hey, I heard about this thing. Sounds fun. I think we would have fun with it." And we're like, I guess why not? And so we started playing. We found someone who my roommates knew at the time who had played before, who DM'd a little thing for us. Didn't work out with them as a DM, but we continued on our own. And honestly, I haven't looked back. It's really become such a passion for me as a person. I've always been a creative person. I've wanted to write since I can remember. When I was little, I wanted to write books. I would spend my free time just creating characters and making, like, drawing and thinking about different personalities and characters. And always in the back of my head, always wanted to be a published novelist someday. Still a big dream of mine, but honestly, once we found D&D, that just became my outlet, my creative outlet. I've always loved world building. And then a few years ago, I started working on my own world instead of just being a player because DMing scared me at that time. So I really delved into the world building and just for the fun of it for myself, honestly, and not thinking about big picture. And then probably 2.5, 3 years ago, I had this silly idea, and I made a tweet about it, and people really liked it. I'm like, oh, maybe
That's
this
good.
is really something. And my brain just kept going with ideas and ideas about what if synesthesia was something you could play with in D&D. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just do it because I have all these ideas. What's stopping me from being the person who puts that together? And so I wrote it, I edited it, I interviewed synesthetes for a while and
Okay.
put together something, put it out about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Um, and like, I'm very grateful for all the people who took their time, gave money for it or in some cases, because I'm just a player with a dream of wanting to be a content creator in some way. I've always wanted to
Yeah.
write. Being in the D&D sphere has been lovely. People on Twitter are lovely.
That's
And
great.
then life kind of happened. I kind of fell off the internet for a while.
Hmm.
And then I got back on, and honestly, I'm like, I could make this better. And I really wanted to update the art, and do a lot of stuff with it. So I've been working on updating it, and I think it's almost ready. I have a couple more things I want to do, but I'm really excited, and I have more ideas for the future. So
That's
yeah.
great. Did you? It's really funny because I think a lot of people have kind of I've been in that situation where it becomes a passion, and then you're like, but what if I could do this, and then
Right.
you get those people that will kind of go, no, I don't feel comfortable, and
Hmm.
then the rest of us go, yeah, but I'll stuff it. I'll give it a go and see what happens. And
Right? Yeah, it's
you
like,
know,
why not?
sometimes
What's it
it's
gonna hurt?
exactly. What's the worst?
Yeah.
People can tell me it's rubbish. Okay, well, I'm
Yeah, and
okay
then
with
I have a
that.
cool thing for myself.
Exactly. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's so cool. I do love that. I love when people, just put stuff out there and go, let's see what happens, and
Yeah.
kind of build from there. So I
Yeah.
guess some people might not know what synesthesia is. So could you just give us
Mhm.
an idea as to what it actually entails?
Yeah. So it's a phenomenon where like the wires are kind of crossed in the brain so that you like a person will experience one sense like sight along right alongside another like smell. And so some common real life examples are people who can taste words or associate specific colors with numbers, that kind of stuff. And so they're inextricably linked. And so they don't change over time either. Is like 7 is always purple, or it's never going to be 7 eventually turns red or something like that. It's
Yeah.
just something it's a phenomena in the brain that connects senses in a way that is really fascinating to me. I am not a synesthete, full disclosure. I have talked to synesthetes. I've done a lot of research on it.
Yeah.
Um, and when I had this idea, D&D is such a great avenue, or TTRPGs in general, honestly, um, where you can take something rooted in reality and make it fantastical and really cool, which is one of the things I did. But I did want to keep it very rooted in reality, and also it is under the like neurodiversity umbrella. So
Yeah.
I do even have a section in the toolkit, excuse me, talking about making sure that you are approaching the subject matter in a very respectful way and understanding that it is under the neurodiversity thing. And so you need to be mindful and respectful if you are going to explore this avenue.
Absolutely. And when you kind of approach people to talk to them, what was the initial reaction from people when you approached them to sort of go, I've got this really cool idea. Can you talk to me about what where you are and kind of
Yeah.
pull it together?
Yeah, so honestly, I did a lot, or it's in the original development of the original version of the toolkit. I have done a little bit for version 2, but honestly, version 2 is mostly just updating, making it better. And so a couple years ago, people were honestly really excited. And I've heard a couple of people nowadays, or recently too, that are like, I have synesthesia, and this is such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see how you approach it. And it's really, really cool to hear that people who have this or have synesthesia are interested in this, because I do want to make sure that they are comfortable with how I have approached it. I never want
Yeah.
to make anybody uncomfortable, make them feel like I am like glamorizing it, and it
No.
doesn't
Yeah.
need to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not my intention at all. And I made sure that whenever I talk to anybody like that, that was very clear. And like, if you feel like this is insensitive in any way, please tell me. And they gave me some really great feedback that I
That's
implemented.
awesome.
And so I'm very grateful to all those people that I was able to communicate with. That's for sure.
I mean, it's you see, I really love that because the things that I find really interesting are when people create passion projects and when they do
Mm-hmm.
something which isn't that kind of like, oh, here's a bard and they can do something. It's when people
Right.
actually root stuff in the real world and bring it through and
Mm-hmm.
try to be, you know, I guess more encompassing and more kind of ways of bringing people in who do have different viewpoints and different ways of kind of seeing things. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact you did the research is really important, and I think that speaks a lot to the design process that you kind of did all of that. What was you talked a little bit about the response people have given you already? So when it first came out, how did it get received? What kind of feedback did you get when you first released it?
Yeah. It was great. It was, I mean, I'm a very small creator. I'm still getting my feet on and or getting my area in the niche, you know. So I don't have that great of a reach yet. I publish on honestly, is it Ko-fi or Kofi? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
Kofi.
remember
Yeah,
how people say it. Kofi. So that's where I currently publish. I'm looking into other avenues, thinking about if I want to do like drive-through RPG, anything like that.
yeah.
So, but this go around, I'm thinking about expanding a little bit. But
Okay.
people, I honestly went into it expecting like not with no expectations. I'm like,
Mm.
this is a passion project. I'm putting my voice out there and in the Twitter. um, and I went in with very low expectations because I didn't want to be disappointed. And probably a couple dozen people downloaded it, and like,
That's
which is
that's
more than
act-
I expected, honestly.
it's
And
really
it's
good.
like
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to all those people. And with version 2, I am sending them a free copy of version 2 because I feel like they already supported me, and it's only right for me to give them an updated version. So
Absolutely.
that is already coming to their inboxes, so to speak. But I'm still pretty new in the sphere, and with my couple of years off on the internet, still getting back in there. But I'm looking forward to seeing where version 2 can go, honestly, and the other ideas that I might have that people
Yeah.
might like. I don't know. Hopefully.
But that's that's just a great place to start from because, like you said, you get out there,
Hmm.
you produce something, and then it starts to grow, and I think that's
Yeah.
really brave for a lot of people, and I think it's a great way to kind of do it to get that growth from people being interested in what you actually do rather than
Right.
mass producing some product and going, well, here's X, but it doesn't actually feel like a person's developed it, almost, if you like.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, and it's one of those things where honestly, like every time I'm on the internet, like getting it in one person's radar can get it in another person's radar, and the
Yeah,
network is endless, honestly, on the internet nowadays.
definitely. Yeah,
And just making sure that it's out there and people know about it, and maybe someday it'll take off and maybe someday it won't, and that's totally fine. This is a passion project that I'm just happy that I saw through to completion.
no,
That,
absolutely, and
yeah.
yeah, like I said, I think that's great. Do you want to just talk us through what's actually in the toolkit itself? So, what kind of things
Yeah.
can people expect when they go and get your product?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna have it up here so that I don't forget anything. I'm just gonna scroll through here.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Um,
You carry on.
yeah. So I do have like just an introduction, not explaining what synesthesia is, and then also how to use the toolkit. And so I really put this together with two different avenues in mind. So if you want to just use it as a role play tool, where it's nothing that changes the gameplay mechanically, you can use this, and it's a lot of really flavorful role play opportunities,
Yeah,
both with the DM and the player, where it can really enhance the world that they are exploring. And also, I did put together a couple mechanics. So, people who are interested in the mechanical kind of side and really changing the gameplay because of this ability,
yeah,
I also have that available as well. And like I said, I do have a little disclaimer for sensitivity
mm-hmm.
because that is very important to me.
Of course.
And then the senses themselves, I broke it up into 8 different senses,
Okay.
which might seem like a lot, but I really think that D&D has such an opportunity for really like almost fantastical, well, not almost, just it is fantastical ways to look at the world. And so I did treat magic and arcane as a whole sense. And so you think about like sorcerers and wizards, even anyone who can cast magic, honestly, and think about the different schools of magic. It's one of my favorite examples of fantastical synesthesia would be like being able to smell magic. Like, what would
Okay.
transmutation magic smell like, and how is that different from like abjuration magic? And on like that's one of my if I was gonna play like if I found
That
a
would be
DM who would
yeah.
let me do this, like can I use my own homebrew? I would love to play because I just love playing casters in general. Like I'm the wizard person. I've played 2 wizards in 2 different campaigns for years at a time. But then also I did, let's see here, get out of the way so I can actually see my own stuff. Auditory. So that one, because it's more like music and the sounds of nature and that kind of thing. And all of these as well can also be the input or the response. So when you're creating your synesthetic character, you get to customize so much. You can, speaking of magic, they respond to magic or they create magic from a response, that kind of thing. I also treated emotions as a sense. And so responding to other people's emotions or really feeling emotions like an empath really deeply, which is another one that might be a little bit more fantastical and not as rooted in reality. But I thought it was a really interesting take in a D&D lens, especially for like a rogue who's really tuned into lying, like being able to pick up on someone lying because it smells different, you know? Gustatory would be tastes. So different tastes. That one is a lot. There's a lovely creator on TikTok. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but she has synesthesia where she can taste names, and she has this tea shop where she will recommend or create custom blends of teas based on how she tastes your name, and it sounds delightful. That's like a real person who's creating stuff on TikTok, not even a fantasy character. Which also I did do lexical as a sense in itself, and so in a D&D lens, I did focus that on the concept of especially like ciphers and handwriting and like forgery kits, and having it be enhancing that sort of skill set that certain characters might have. Then there's the smell, the sense of smell, olfactory, synesthesia, and so different scent families. And then the last two would be tactile and visual. Tactile would be different sensations and like different textures. Visual is one of the most customizable options you have with this, is literally anything you can think of that is visual. Generally comes up as like abstract colors and shapes and patterns, but honestly it's so customizable. And one of the most interesting avenues that I thought about is how healing could be incorporated into this, and honestly damage, like a barbarian or a fighter taking hits in combat could be in relation to both emotional or tactile, depending on how you want to look at it. So I really went on a really deep tangent there, didn't I? Just talking about the different senses.
Yeah, I love it.
And then I did also include a background called the Synesthete, which I do have as a free preview on my Ko-fi, which the classic D&D mechanic of your background that shapes who you are as a character and your personality. Also a whole feat, which would be available if you have an existing character that you want to create into a synesthete without using the background. You can get this feat with your DM's approval and create them into, or turn them into a synesthete for one reason or another. And then would be the two different mechanical options that I put in here.
Okay.
The first being synesthete abilities, which kind of functions similar to a warlock's invocations, where you have different, you can choose based on your prereq, or based on a couple different things, and gives you mechanical things that you can do in game that is based on your synesthesia. And then the other one is called sensory overload, which is meant to balance the abilities. And so you think about, even anybody can attest to being like, when you get so much sensory input that it's kind of hard to navigate. And so when you think about D&D as a character adventuring around, you're going to be encountering so many massive sensory input kind of things. And so I was thinking about like someone who has such a unique experience with their senses, certain things would be really challenging for them, honestly. And so I go through how to work with your DM on recognizing which kind of situations and triggers would create different kinds of symptoms with your character. And so there's a variety of symptoms, both minor and more serious symptoms, that you're going to have to navigate as an adventurer with synesthesia if you're going to go this route with the mechanics. And so there's also ways to overcome it. And then I have tons and tons of tables, dozens of tables, to help anybody create really unique, different sensory experiences that are nuanced. And so it's not just like magic is, or transmutation is blue and abjuration is green. It's
Yeah.
so much more nuanced than that. And so I have tons of tables in here to help create really unique associations. And then lastly, I did add in, or I put like character concepts. And so like there's some that are more obvious, but honestly, any character can be a synesthete. And so I did 2 different combinations of senses that could work with all 12 artificer, so
Wow.
all 12 of the base classes. And so there's different character concepts that you are more than welcome to use directly, use them as inspiration, don't use them at all, I don't care. But I wanted to show that it's so customizable and can work with any character concept, which is also why I didn't want to make it a subclass of any sort or a class of its own, because I wanted it to be as open as it possibly can be for anybody to use, because neurodiversity is like,
Yeah.
it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
You know.
I mean,
So
that sounds like a ton of stuff you put into that. It really does. That's
yeah,
great. I mean, again, it's clearly something you're passionate about and something you've put in a ton of work for. It sounds fantastic. It really does.
well, thank you.
What if? What's your? Have you got? As you said, you already that you play a wizard. If you were
Mhm.
creating a character with synesthesia, have you thought about what they would look like? Have you?
Oh gosh, I thought of so many. I did play um, for a little bit in a Witchlight campaign, where I played a she was a sorcerer. She was a wild magic sorcerer who could smell magic. Um,
Nice.
and that campaign, it just didn't work out overall long term, but she was so much fun to play. So smelling magic, and it was really fun, like getting really detailed descriptions. All of the evocation magics had an undertone of like that firework kind of thing, like the
Oh
burnt
yeah,
out
yeah,
fireworks. So
yeah.
all of the evocations had different, like a layer of that, which was really fun. But honestly, I am such a person who loves character concepts in general that I can get excited about anything. If I think about it for more than 2 minutes, I'm in. I want to play them.
That's great. No,
So,
it's so good. It really is. So, where can people get that from, or where can they? Where will they be able to get version 2 when it comes out?
I'm for sure on my Ko-fi. And like I'm looking into if I want to do drive through RPG. And so follow me on Twitter for the most up to date information, but for sure on my Ko-fi, which is also MND&D Unicorn. Um, and then keep an eye on our drive through RPG or DM's Guild, possibly, but at minimum on my Ko-fi.
I'm really interested when you take on a writing project.
Mhm.
What's your kind of starting point? How do you kind of set yourself out and get started when you're doing a new piece of work?
Um, you know, because this is my main focus on like proper content creation. I'm gonna think of it in my lens of my campaign
Yeah,
planning,
yeah, absolutely.
because I also run a home game. So have big picture, have a concept, and then I just word vomit in a Word document all of the ideas that might work, and
Yeah.
just brainstorm. And then maybe a day later, I have to go back and I'm like, okay, is this really feasible? And how do I make this work? I have a lot of third party content. This is or some of my books. And I go through, I find monsters that are really thematical. I love third party creators. I will support them till the day I die. And so I always want to use them as much as I can for my
Nice.
players. For my own personal, I would love to collaborate, but I love um, just as the most whimsy as I can cram into anything. Great. But brainstorming, kind of paring down, realizing what's realistic within the
Yeah.
project, but also keeping diversity, inclusion, sensitivity in mind,
Yeah. Nice.
especially for anything I'm putting on the internet, but even at my home game. Um, Anything like that is very high priority for me.
Definitely. No. And
Yeah.
and and that's the way it should be, as far as I'm concerned. I
Mhm.
think I think we've come a long way. We've still got a lot to do, but
Oh yeah,
we should be approaching it from that kind of point of view of let's be considerate of whoever's joining our games.
exactly. Like even if it doesn't apply to you, it's not hard to extend a little empathy for the people that it does apply to.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
diversity makes everything every bit just a little bit better.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you kind of draw your own inspiration from? Is it something that just comes to you, or do you have a process for kind of pulling ideas in?
Oh, every which way. Everything is just from something else, like every situation. This one, I think it just popped into my head one day, and I'm like, well, that's a cool idea. And it just kind of grew from there. My home campaign right now, I'm not going to do spoilers, but
Yeah, absolutely.
just in case any of my players end up watching this. But it was all inspired by a movie that I watched that I hope none of them have watched because that'll ruin a really cool reveal.
I was going to ask
But
you which movie, but I won't ask now.
yeah, no, I'll message you.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Um, but honestly, I've been an avid fantasy fan for my entire life, and so I borrow things, I get inspired from things, and some of my favorite ideas are some that just pop into my head out of nowhere. And I'm just like, what if there was just this community of gnomes? There, I have this little village or a city in my homebrew world that the gnomes use home or the seed of the idea was hot air balloons, and that was the main transport. And so it's just a town built on hilltops that get flooded regularly, so they use hot air balloons to get around. And the visual of dozens of hot air balloons on the horizon was the seed of that idea. And
That's great.
just delving into those little ideas, I'm like, there's something there, and I got to figure out what it is and put it somewhere in my world.
That's really cool. I love that. That's and I think it just works really well, doesn't it? You just kind of go, well, what if? And it just generates so many brilliant ideas. But I love the idea of just like this gnome town, and they're all in little hive. That's so cool. That really is cool.
Yeah, it's that my whole philosophy on world building is what if and whimsy, and just throw it in a pot and see what comes out.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Right? I hope not. The players seem to like it so far.
And do you know what? That's probably the best mark of it. You can have the greatest ideas ever, but if it doesn't land with the players, it's not fun.
Yeah, I have some of the best players. They really indulge me when I feel like when almost every session I end up rambling on about some of my lore, and they sometimes I feel like they might be humoring me, but some of them I choose to believe that they really enjoy my lore.
Yeah, been there. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yep.
Yeah, if
yep.
you're not careful,
my pantheon has just growing.
It's suddenly an hour later, and you think, oh, we're in the middle of a game, right? I really should get back to actually taking.
I'm like, this is really not relevant to what we're doing right now, but you guys asked the question, and here we are. So
that's the way it works.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you find most challenging about the design process? What's tough for you?
Just because it's an area I am not as well versed in is mechanics and balancing, and just the minutia of is this balanced? And I have a lot of great friends who are also DMs, that some of them at my table that play for me, and I rely, and I'm so grateful for anybody who will let me pick their brain about mechanics and making sure, like, hey, does this sound good? Does this sound reasonable? That kind of thing. And so it's something that I'm getting more comfortable in as time goes on, but the mechanics are, just because I started and played for so long, I wasn't a DM at the beginning of my D&D experience. It's just making sure that everything makes sense mechanically and is interesting and valid and balanced, honestly.
Yeah, and works. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's great to have great ideas, but it's got to actually fly as it were. Yeah, definitely.
Right, because like with the toolkit, like, because at first I was just approaching it from a role play lens,
Yeah.
where like it's such a cool avenue for role play and rich world building. I'm like what? How much can you do with that? And so getting into more mechanical ways to explore it was a really fun challenge because it, I I want to run a one shot that I hope to put out in the future
Oh wow.
with some people, with there's some regular real life friends, not on the internet, but like to fully play test some of this stuff because like as a passion project, people I would love to hear people actually use this at their
Mm.
tables. But like I made it available to my current home party, which by no fault of their own, they weren't interested in playing with it yet. I'm like, totally fine, don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, not that I don't care, but like I understand that we're starting a whole new thing, and
Yeah.
I would love to get real feedback on how it functions at multiple tables with multiple DMs and players and
Hmm.
different play styles because I made it with my play style in mind and my GM style where I understand that's not everybody's style. And so getting feedback on how it real life functions, real life
Yeah.
playing a game, um, functions at tables. I look forward to hopefully hearing from people.
Hmm.
But I forgot what the original question was where I went on this tangent.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember what the original question was either, so we're okay. No, but I think that's really interesting because I think you're right. I think some people come to these kinds of things very technically minded, and they'll lay out all the mechanics, and then they've got to work out, well, how does that work in a
Right.
in the kind of narrative sense and that side of
Mm-hmm.
things. And then obviously, like yourself, come from the other point of view where you've then got this great idea, but you've got to make it work in terms of rules
Mm-hmm.
and those kinds of
Right.
things. But you're quite right. The only way we really make things better and actually see what works is feedback. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, if anybody has downloaded this and has used it, please, 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 feedback.
Love to hear.
Make sure it's constructive, of course, because that's what's
Yes, please.
useful. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. But it just helps us all as writers and developers just get better at our kind of craft. So yeah, absolutely. If you are out there and you have been using it, feedback is always useful. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Review your products that you get from third party creators. It's
Yeah, yeah.
meaningful beyond words, in my
It's how
opinion.
we get seen. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
it's one of the
Make it better. Yeah.
it's one of the tougher things because we don't have, obviously big corporations come out and do massive kind of tests. We just don't
Right.
have that kind of facility. So every little
Yeah.
bit helps, definitely.
Absolutely.
What do you think you learnt or the biggest lesson you learnt from producing this, putting it out there, and kind of creating a piece? What do you think you learnt from it?
Uh, honestly, for because I've been such a creative and person my entire life, and creating something to completion on my own without structure of like school. I was an art minor in college, and I always joke with myself because like I wish I did more art, but I don't have deadlines and assignments to push me to complete things. And I wanted to be a writer my entire life, but I start stories and then it kind of trails off. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Like things change, you find inspiration elsewhere. I just I finished a product that I am so proud of, and maybe it's not as much of a lesson, but it is something to remind myself of that I can complete a project that is purely a passion project, and sometimes people like it, and that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is it, isn't it? Is sometimes it's the process of creating it and having it out there. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be, this massive multi-million pound thing. Sometimes it's just the fact that it exists and it
Hmm.
exists and there are people using it. That's a
Hmm.
big deal, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and say, and even just having like I've always dreamed about like having a physical copy of something I've made, like a written thing.
Yes.
and I have a printed off copy of version 1 that sits in my D&D library. I wonder if I have it here. Oh, it's on my other shelf. But like having a physical copy of something that I've made and put out into the world that people have enjoyed is priceless to me.
Yeah,
It's just so cool.
I agree with that, because I did I wrote a piece, and it's the first piece I kind of got published, and I'm going to be downloading it and I'm going to be framing it, and it's going to sit on my wall at some point just to go, this thing exists. You did this. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. It's going to live in my library forever, even though it's version 1. I'll get another one for version 2. And it's just printed at like FedEx or something, but it's still it's physical,
real. It's tangible, and
exactly.
You are a writer.
Yeah, my friend told me that over dinner after I released version 1. She's like, "You are a published author technically," and I'm like, "It kind of feels not weird. Quite like that, but I understand the sentiment."
but it's true, isn't it? I mean, and this is it.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly like you said. Sometimes it's this thing existing is huge. It's a massive thing, and you should rightly be really proud of it, because it's a great piece of work.
Thank you.
It really is.
Thank you. I'm going to send you a copy when version 2 is done. I promise.
I appreciate that. No, thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
I will then look to see if I can incorporate it in a game and get you some feedback.
Oh, I would love to hear your feedback on it.
Definitely.
Even just reading it, if it never makes it to a table, I'd love to hear.
100%. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that for you. Definitely.
Oh, thank you so much.
No. Oh, this is nice. What kind of advice would you give other people who are kind of just starting out and just thinking about, have seen this and gone, do you know what, actually, maybe I should put my piece out there?
Honestly, don't give up. Like, even if it's just for yourself, see it through to completion. It feels so fulfilling to look at a project and be like, I made that. And if you put it out on the internet and people like it, that's just icing on the cake. But honestly, just don't give up on it, because I promise your ideas are so cool. And it might not be everybody's cup of tea. My stuff is not everybody's cup of tea, and I understand that. But it's going to be someone's cup of tea somewhere. And they're not going to know about it unless you continue on and finish it and put it out there. And it's worth it every time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So one question I really like to ask anybody that comes on and talks to me: how do you deal with social media? Because it can be a tricky landscape to navigate and keep yourself centered on.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with it?
Honestly, you have to do it. I guess the way I do it. No one has to do it this way, but you have to do it in small doses. Like, you can't sit on it all day, every day. If you treat it like an 8-to-5 desk job, it's not going to be fun or fulfilling, and it's going to be draining. And so I tend to do it in chunks and engage with people and make friends with people on the internet, support other people's work. But honestly, don't make it don't make it a full-time job. It is part of, in my opinion, a very important piece of putting stuff out there and marketing and everything like that. But if you focus too much on, well, that person didn't follow me back, or that person's not promoting my work, and not working on making things the best that they can be in your power, what is the point? You're just someone on the internet. And buying followers. It's like, I really value making real connections with people, and when people when I left for the internet, or I guess Twitter specifically, I was on my own personal stuff, but I left Twitter for a couple of years just because life got up to me and things happened, and I came back, and there are people that remembered me, and that really that felt really good. Just remembered my original toolkit, remembered me being on there, supporting their work and supporting my work. And it's the connections that are worth more than the numbers, honestly, is what it boils down to, in my opinion.
No, again, 100% agree with you. I think, you've got people that have got millions of followers, but
Mhm.
it's only numbers. It's not necessarily real.
Yeah, it's not real connection. It's just some numbers on a screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Avery, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. So, folks,
Yes, I agree.
do make sure you go out and pick up version 2. So, just remind us again where people can find you on the internet and where they will be able to get hold of version 2 of the Synesthesia Toolkit.
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, I guess, is MN_D&D_unicorn. The MN is because I'm from Minnesota, if that's help you remember.
Okay.
And then it's the same on Ko-fi, I think, without the underscores. So keep an eye out there. Getting really close to releasing version 2, and I'm so excited. They did release the cover art a couple days ago, which I'm really proud of. So I'm excited.
I'll make sure links will go into the notes of the video so that people can obviously click across and download that. But yeah, so guys, please go out there and do make sure you do download it. Do make sure you give some feedback and just enjoy it, just because I think it's going to open up some new and interesting ideas for your campaigns. So yeah, once again, Avery, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for letting me be on your show, and it was lovely talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Really, really
Letting
nice
me
talking to you.
ramble on about my stuff.
That is what this show's about.
That's true.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for popping along. Don't forget you can follow me across the social media as well. I'm under the Gamers Rest. But that's everything we've got time for today. So do take care of yourselves and those that can't. And of course, do come back and join us again when we'll be talking to more people in the TTRPG industry. Thanks everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.